the renewal of Islamic thought at the conference, Cairo conference for the renewal of Islamic thought. Is this even possible? Welcome, Catholicos, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, all who seek the truth. So this conference took place January 27th in Cairo, Egypt. And it was a conference basically prompted by the president of Egypt, El-Sisi, who wants to renew the what they call the al-fikr al-dini, or the religious thought, mainly Islamic thought, or a renewal of this religious discourse. And so this conference was held at the Al-Azhar University, which is the premier Islamic university in the Islamic world. And so the guy you see there standing, this is the, I'm going to start playing him with no audio. So he's the president of the University of Cairo. So he's addressing these clerics. Well, there is no clerics in Islam. There is scholars, so-called, and different interested parties. And his discourse is about the renewal of Islamic thought, and in it, I'm going to go through some of his, very briefly, of what he says, but what interests us is the response of the head, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University, El-Tayyeb. That's his name. His Tayyeb, which means as well the kind. That's his last name. So anyways, and all respects to the Imam, to Dr. El-Tayyeb, because he is being honest about what true Islam is against what this government official, pretty much, the head of the University of Cairo, is trying to impose, which is basically a modernism into Islam, a higher criticism of the Quran and the text, according to this is the guy. This is the Tayyib. He's the head of the Al-Azhar University, basically the most respected and listened to authority in the Islamic Sunni world. But again, what I want to point out is that a lot of non-Arabic speaking people don't know and don't understand what the true doctrines of Islam, especially relating to non-Muslims, especially Christians and Jews to some extent. And that is, it's going to come up in this conference. And I want to point that out. So for the stupid people of the West who know nothing about Islam, and they just listen to somebody speaking in English, pretending to speak about this religion, they believe everything they hear, because they are, as we say from the Middle East, they are just stupid. What is wrong with these people? Anyways, so let's get started. Give me a second here. So let's see from 2 minutes. Oh, yeah, I have him here. I'm going to pause it here for a second. From 2 minutes and 26 seconds. So I'm going to play a brief audio for those of you who understand Arabic, and for those who you don't. It's kind of fun, I guess, to watch. And I'm going to let him talk for less than a minute, maybe even less, and I'll just stop it. And then I'll say what his proposal, what he wants to be done. So let's get the audio up here. Here we go. I'm going to shut up now, and you can watch him for a few seconds, and then we'll talk.
استاتيكي ثابت يعتمد على النقل والاستنساخ، والرسائل الجماعية تعلمون كيف هي. يبدأ بسيرته وحياته وتاريخه والتعريف الاصطلاحي والتعريف اللغوي. اسطمبة واحدة قائمة على النقل والاستنساخ. ما فيش تحليل نقدي ولا تحليل علمي ولا استفادة من مناهج العلوم الإنسانية والاجتماعية. بل
He talks a bit more from what I'm going to say, but I don't want to waste your time, especially if you don't understand what he's saying. Basically, he says, look, the Quran is meant to be the book for كل زمان وكل مكان, which means every time, all for all time and for every place. So for every time and every place. So basically it's good for people from 1,000 years ago, and it is good and valuable for people from 1,000 years from now. So every time and every place, so every country. So he says the Quran is our standard. It's the book. It should be. We know it's the book for every place and every time. كل زمان وكل مكان. So, and he says, look, the state of the Islamic thought, Islamic religious studies at the moment is static. It is not moving. It's static. So what he wants to do is taking the Quran to do the basis. He's not going totally Quranic, which is these what they consider Al-Azhar and others heretics, because they are called the Quran only people, and so they ignore all the hadiths and the Sunnah and the Sirat al-Nabi, which is the life of Muhammad, and all of these things which form basically true Islam, and are used actually as an understanding of what the Quran actually says. And they say, well, we don't care about all of that. We know the Quran is the book of God, so all we're going to do is just look at the Quran, and almost like Protestants of the 16th century. But the problem with the Quran is it's a bunch of verses and a lot of contradictions. And it's like reading some poetry sometimes. Okay, it's nice Arabic language. But the problem is it is not possible to form a doctrine from the Quran. Even how to pray is not specifically written in the Quran on how to pray. So that's why all the hadiths, especially they've got their most authoritative, like Bukhari and Muslim, which accumulated all the sayings of the Prophet and the actions of the Prophet and the judgments of the Prophet and what he looked like and how he shaved and how he dressed and all that stuff. And so, and even when certain verses came down upon the Prophet of Allah. So, and because you see as well, for example, in the Quran, when he was in Mecca, some verses are very, very nice towards Christians and Jews. The Christians have their gospel and the Jews have the Torah, and, listen to them and ask them. And then when he went to Medina, when he traveled and then came back as a conquering Lord, Muhammad, that completely changed with the chapter 9, I believe, in the Quran, which is then there's the verse of the sword, which is basically you subjugate them, you submit them, you make them pay the jizya and all that stuff. Complete contradiction. So, and why is that? You have to go to the hadith, and you see, whenever it's convenient for Muhammad, whatever he wants to do something, or he wants to marry somebody, magically Allah, his God, gives him an inspiration, and suddenly his wish is God's command. So you need actually the hadiths to understand the Quran. Otherwise, there would be no Islam. So he's not going totally all Quranic here. He's saying, well, the Quran, yes, and all the rest of the heritage, which they will talk about a lot. The heritage, which is Torath, Torath, it's the same word. The heritage, which includes all the non-Quranic writings, which is basically all the hadiths, Sirah, the Sunnah, all that stuff. He said, purify all of that. Get rid of pretty much. Don't just say, well, we're going to remove certain sayings or hadiths, because these were Israeliyat, they call them, which is basically, it's stuff they did, and they say, well, some Jews must have put them in there because, obviously Muhammad wouldn't say that. He said, don't just purify that. The whole thing needs to be completely, even basically almost getting rid of, and have a new thought. So, but basically, so he says, look, basically, adhere to the Quran and completely purify all the rest of the Torath, which is the heritage. Only the purest of the pure of it adhere to, and we should have a brand new way of understanding and thinking. So of course that doesn't go down well with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar. So, so he says in this part when I stop, he says basically in the portion which is past, he says, what's the state of the religious studies right now? It's static, we don't, we're not, there is no critical thought. There is simply copying and repeating. There is no scientific analysis of the text of the Torath. I'm just looking at my notes here because I translated some of it. And we don't have we're not being beneficiaries of modern study in humanities and social sciences, and so forth. So basically, this is his thing. And he says, look, and because if people are stuck with the Torath, with the heritage, and all these old books, that is, and the wars and the conflicts of these old books are still carried on today by ISIS. And of course, later on in the debate, basically the Imam of Al-Azhar, El-Tayyeb, would say, no, go to the countryside, ask any peasant if what ISIS does is Islamic, and they will tell you no. But of course, ISIS backs everything they do with verses from the Quran, with verses from the Hadith and the life of Muhammad. So actually, ISIS is actually more faithful to true Islam than the munafiqeen, which would be like, I guess hypocrites would be the words, because they will not. He says, the Sheikh al-Azhar say later on, it's like, I'm sick of going around telling people Islam is not a terrorist religion. We have conferences on conferences. I'm tired of saying that because we're not. Of course, ISIS doesn't represent true Islam. I think ISIS actually takes Islam as the beginning of Islam. So this professor is actually correct, because how did Islam spread in the first place? Anyways, so this is basically what this man wants. Basically a purification of Islam. Just stuck with the Quran, ignore basically all the heritage, or so purify that very little of it is left, and use scientific methods and modern humanities and social sciences and critical studies to basically form a new Islam, basically. All right, so now I'm going to go skip to Sheikh El-Tayyeb, which he starts at 3, what time? Distinguish between hadith. Oh, one more thing. I'm going to let you play just a second more so you can listen to him again.
استعاد لكل المعارك القديمة وعاد الشيء إلى تطوير علوم الدين وليس إحياء علوم الدين. لأن إحياء علوم الدين معناه.
So one thing he says, up to minute 3:17, he says, we are calling, like him and his group and even the president of Egypt, he says, we are calling for an updating of religious studies, meaning Islamic religious studies, not their revival. So he says that specifically. I want updating of Islam, but not its revival, not the revival of religious studies of Islam, but an updating of its religious studies. He says, and the reason being, he says, the revival of Islamic religious studies means reviving all the old understandings. And he exactly does not want the revival of the old understandings based upon the books of Islam, the Hadith, the Surah, the Sunnah, and all that stuff. And he ends it, or at a portion sometime before the Sheikh Al-Azhar intervenes, he says, nobody owns the absolute truth except God. Of course, we would disagree because there is truth. And of course, Sheikh Al-Azhar will disagree because, of course, he will say, what do you mean there is no absolute truth? Except God knows the absolute truth. Nobody, that's what he says. Nobody owns the absolute truth except God. All right, so now let's go into what concerns us is the response of Sheikh Al-Azhar, which starts at So I'm going to skip here 14 minutes. And, well, we can start a bit earlier. All right. So at 14 minutes and 41 seconds. Well, maybe I'll skip it to there. Just 1 second here. Well, it's coming to it. I'll let him talk a bit. Up to 15 minutes and 16 seconds, or I might just stop. Oops.
ليس تجديدا، هذا إهمال وترك وإعلان يعني الفرقة للبيت الوالد مع احترامه. التجديد يا سيدي في بيت الوالد يكون في بيت الوالد، ويكون بدل ما يكون طوب أخضر ولا.
All right, that's good enough. So basically he starts off by saying, look, you said, he's talking now to the president of the University of Cairo, you said that the renewal is like my father's house. But, so he's talking directly to the president of the University of Cairo, which we saw at the beginning. So he says, what you're saying, you said that the renewal of Islamic religious thought is like my father's house. I love it and appreciate it, but I don't live there. I live in another new house. So that's what he's telling the president of the University of Cairo to say as saying. And he tells, Sheikh El-Azhar El-Tayyeb there, he says, look, this is not renewal, but negligence and leaving a separation from the father's house. The renewal of a father's house is in the father's house. And that is his response, which I totally understand. Like if somebody comes to Christianity or the Catholic faith and says, well, ignore all of tradition, throw away all the fathers of the church, throw away all their interpretations of scripture, throw away all discipline. Let's come up, invent a brand new discipline, brand new understanding, brand new. And let's take the Bible, even though the Bible is far, no comparison with the Quran. Quran is a bunch of just poetry, basically. It's almost impossible to understand, form doctrines out of it. But so with the Constitution of the United States. You cannot just take the Constitution. You have to understand it based upon the framers of the Constitution. How did they understand this document they were writing? Same thing with Christianity. You have to understand it with the, St. Paul says, keep all that I have taught you by letter, which means scripture, what is available, and by word, which is tradition, which is passed on to us through the writings of the Holy Fathers and through the liturgies, the ancient liturgies. So I totally agree with his point of view. Of course, I don't agree with the religion of Islam at all, but from his point of view, he is absolutely correct. You can't go build another house and call it, I'm renewing this house. Same thing about on my video on the third temple, Herod's temple. You cannot demolish the second temple completely, remove the foundation completely, put a brand new foundation and a brand new building and still call it the second temple. And that's what they do, which is, of course, ludicrous. So now let's continue. Now it's at 17 minutes. Let's see here. 17 minutes and 3 seconds. So let's start maybe a bit earlier than that. Again, I'll let him talk for 20 seconds and then I'll explain what he says.
الكلام عن التراث كلام عجيب. يعني أنا أسأل حضرتك مثلا، قصارى ما يقال في نقد التراث أن التراث لا تقفوا عنده لا تقلدوا أو خذوا ما فيه إلى آخره. هذه مزايدة على التراث لأن هذه المقولة موجودة في قلب التراث.
Okay, so now he says, look, all this talk of people criticizing the tradition, it's really the heritage. That's Torath, Torath, which is the heritage. So it includes all the writings which form Islam, and the jurisprudence, how to rule on things, Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic Sharia, Islamic law. That's all part of the heritage, the Torath. So he says all this talk of people criticizing the Torath, the heritage, is strange. It's strange. It's so strange. All these people are saying, don't follow the Torath, don't imitate it, ignore it, and so forth. And this is, he says, look, this is just, and the word he uses in Arabic, I don't think it has a really good English translation for it. He says this is muzayada at-Torath, which means muzayada means it's like you're bidding, you're at an auction and you're increasing your bid, you're muzayid, you're increasing. So this is like an increase, you're almost an insult to the Torath, to the heritage. So he says, what is up with these people? Everybody's telling us, ignore it, leave it, abandon it. So, okay, let's continue. Let's see, where am I? 7 minutes and 46, 1746. Now this is what's coming up next is very important for the West, for Europe, for America, for South America, for Latin, all formerly Christian lands. And then you will see later on, you will see the total blindness of Muslims to what they are saying. They justify something when they do it, and they condemn it when others do it. But I'm just going to show you. I'm going to play it here from 17 minutes, 46 seconds. And it's a bit of I'm not sure how long I'm going to let it play. For those of you who understand Arabic, you can watch the whole thing. But, okay, I'll let it play for a bit, and then I'll pause it whenever, and then I'll continue.
هذا التراث يا سيدي الذي يعني نهول من شأنها اليوم حمل مجموعة من القبائل العربية التي كانت متناحرة ولا تعرف يمينا من شمال في ظرف 80 عام إلى أن يضعوا قدمهم في الأندلس وقدمهم الأخرى في الصين، لأنهم فعلا كانوا يعرفون أو وضعوا أيديهم على مواطن القوة في هذا التراث. هذا التراث خلق أمة.
So I paused it here because he says, unless my timing on my notes is off, but basically he says, look, this heritage, this tradition, this Torath, which you are making fun of, which the critics of the Torath are belittling, this Torath, this heritage, carried a group of Arabs, a group of Arab tribes that didn't know left from right, is that in 80 years, that this Torath took these Arabs, who didn't know these tribes from didn't know their left and right, they took them in 80 years and made them put their foot in Andalusia, which is Spain, and China. And people clapped at 18 minutes and 4 seconds. So basically he says, look, this heritage, this Torath, which you are belittling, allowed a group of little Arab tribes to put their foot into Spain and China. And how did they do that? Through invasions. They invaded North Africa, Europe, Spain. They went into India, the Middle East, up to China. And he says, this is the strength of the Torath. This heritage allowed these little tribes to put their foot, in Andalus, in Andalusia, and in China. And the reason is, he says, because these tribes were able to put their hands on the sources of power in the Torath, in the heritage. I'm going to let it play a bit more.
كاملة وتعايش مع التاريخ قل لي حضرتك قبل أن ننفتح، وسيادتك طبعا أستاذنا في هذا المجال، قبل أن نلتقي بالحملة الفرنسية العالم الإسلامي كيف كان يسير؟ ما الذي كان يسيره؟ أليست قوانين الشريعة الإسلامية؟ أليست التراث؟ طيب هل يعني والفتوحات التي
Okay, so again, if hopefully my timing is, for those who understand Arabic, might make slight difference. For those who don't, it doesn't really make any difference. But anyway, so he says here, up to where I stopped, he says, this heritage created an ummah, a nation, a people, an ummah. They always say in Arabic, Ummat la ilaha illallah, which means Ummat la ilaha illallah, the nation of no God but Allah, which is basically meaning the Islamic, the house of Dar al-Salam, Dar al-Islam, which is the house of Islam, because there's the other part which is Dar al-Harb, which is the house of war. That's the thought in it. So they say, yeah, as a, because I watch Arabic TV, so it's like, oh, as a, in the, colloquially, Ummat la ilaha illallah, which is the whole nation of la ilaha illallah is going to rise up for whatever, it doesn't have to be a religious thing. It could be just, whatever. But that's what he says. Look, he says, this heritage, this Torath, created an ummah, a complete nation, people, that lived with history. Tell me. So he asks the professor, the head of the University of Cairo, tell me. So before the French invasion, the conquest of France into Egypt, Napoleon, I think, came to Egypt. So before the French invasion of Egypt, how did the Islamic world operate? How did the Islamic world operate before this? Because now we're taking the European laws and how did we all operate? How did the Islamic world operate? How was it guided? Isn't it the Islamic Sharia and Torath heritage? Isn't it this how we lived, how we governed with our Islamic Torath, our Islamic Sharia law? This is how we lived. So you're telling me after whatever 1,000 years, 1,200 years, we weren't able to live? This Torath, which you are belittling, governed nations, a whole ummah from Spain to China. That's what he's saying. So it starts from 1835. Again, this is important for the, should I say, stupid people again in the West, but maybe for the uninformed, or for the willfully blind, or willfully ignorant, let's say. So here, I'm going to let him talk first, and then I will tell you what he is talking about. He is basically talking about the Islamic invasions of all of North Africa, the Middle East, up to China, and into Europe, in glowing terms. But I'll let him play, I'll let him talk a bit, then I'll pause, and then I'll explain.
تمت على أيدي هؤلاء العرب الذين لم يكونوا يتعلمون شيئا من فنون القتال حتى، إنما كانوا يعتمدون على ما كان يدور بينهم أو كان يحدث بينهم من مناوشات بالترس ولا بالسيف ولا بالقوس إلى آخر ما نجده في الشعر الجاهلي وفي الشعر الإسلامي أيضا. هؤلاء يعني حملهم التراث. هذه الدول الإسلامية والحضارة التي تقلبت وجاء بعضها إثر بعض في قوة، كان يضيف قوة إلى قوة، الأمويين العباسيين إلى كان التراث هو الذي يحملهم. فإذا تصوير التراث بأنه هو كان يعني شيئا يورث الضعف ويورث يعني التراجع، هذه مزايدة على التراث. احنا نحفظ من
Here we go. So, what was he babbling about, you tell me? I'll tell you. So, again, I hope my timing is correct in the cutoffs there. But he says, look, and he's continuing his speech, again, is because of the Torath, the heritage, which forms really Islam. He says, look, and these futuhat, these literal translation, openings, which is the code word of the Islamic invasions and subjugation of Christian lands and even non-Christian. They went into China, they went into Persia. So the Muslims, they never talk about, well, we invaded Egypt, we invaded Ethiopia, we invaded Syria, we invaded Lebanon, we invaded Constantinople, we invaded Spain, we invaded, Eastern Europe, we invaded Libya, we invaded Tunisia, we invaded, all these other, Morocco. No, these are not invasions. It's like 1984 Newspeak, These are not invasions. These are openings. We were opening these countries to Islam. That's what it is. It's the openings. So this is the word he uses for the Islamic invasions of these lands and the Arab invasion of these lands, because Egyptians aren't Arabs, Libyans aren't Arabs, Syrians aren't Arabs, Lebanese aren't Arabs, Iraqis aren't Arabs. Now they speak all Arabic, and there's, especially with the Muslim population, intermarriage. So they are partially Arab with those who had intermarriage with the invading Islamic Arab hordes. But we're not Arabs. We might speak the language, but we are not Arabs. Anyways, so here we go. I'll translate what he said. He says, look, and these futuhat, which is a source of pride for Muslims. It's not a bad thing. It's not like the Western, stupid Westerners who say, oh, bad crusades, oh, sorry world, sorry Muslims for the bad crusades, even though you were invading and taking over everything. Sorry, we tried to defend ourselves. Sorry for the crusades. No, this is the futuhat, the invasions, the Arab Islamic invasions of all of North Africa and the Middle East and Europe is a source of pride for them. And he says, and these futuhat, these invasions, that were accomplished by the hands of those Arabs, those Muslim Arabs, who were imitating Muhammad, who had a whole bunch of battles in his lifetime, wars against the mushrikeen and those who would not submit to his rule, imitating their Lord. So he said, these futuhat, invasions that were, he doesn't say the word invasions, but that's exactly what they are, which were accomplished by the hands of those Arabs who didn't even know anything about the art of war. This is kind of false because they always fought amongst each other and amongst other people. So they did know the art of war, but maybe not to a very great extent. Except in minor skirmishes between, one tribe and another tribe, as we read in the histories and in Islamic lore and pagan lore. But he says these men, these Arabs, who did the futuhat, the invasions of the world, these men were carried while they were doing the futuhat. How did they do them? They were carried by the Torath. They were carried by the Torath, by the heritage. That is what gave them the strength to do the futuhat, the openings, the invasions. The Torath. These Islamic countries. And he continues, he says, these Islamic countries and the cultures that came and changed over time, one after the other, in strength. They were going from strength to strength. It was the Torath, the heritage, that carried them. Therefore, picturing the heritage or the Torath as something that begets weakness and regress, like going back, taraga in Arabic, going back, regress, this is muzayada. Again, this is like you're bidding, you're overbidding against, you're insulting the Torath basically. This is muzayada on the Torath. So we see Islamic invasions are the futuhat, which were from Andalus, from Andalusia to China to Persia, something to be proud of, carried by the Torath, by the heritage, something we are proud of, and this is our heritage. And we ruled all these countries from strength to strength because we had the heritage, we had the Torath. And now you're telling us to ignore it? So now I'm going to skip a bunch. It starts again from again, this shows you that we shouldn't be fooled by people saying, oh, now times have changed. And these are all, you can look at the population, the people sitting there. There's obviously this guy next to him on his right is obviously from a real Arab from one of the Arabian Peninsula, one of the countries there. But then you see, all kinds of races in the back. So probably some people are black, some people you can tell from Indonesia, because it's a big international conference for the renewal or the renovation of Islamic thought. So they're all there. And they love Sheikh Al-Azhar because he expresses true Islam, basically. Yeah, our heritage is our strength. And that's why when they go to Spain, you'll see always, as soon as the Islamic population grows, they want to take back their church, or their mosque, which was turned into a church. Which, of course, they forget that when they invaded, they destroyed churches and turned churches into mosques. But that's not important. But you took our mosque? No, we want it back. We want to go pray in it now. Anyways. So, from 22 minutes and 40 seconds. Let's see here. 22 minutes. I'm going to play just 15 seconds and then I'll pause it. Here we go.
أن السياسة تختطف الدين اختطافا في الشرق والغرب حينما يريدون أن يحققوا غرضا لا يرضاه الدين. وهذا حدث في الحرب 30 عام.
All right. So he says, look, it is politics. Again, he has a point there. Again, I'm not insulting him in any way. He has a point. He says, look, politics, because the professor of the University of Cairo is saying, look, because all these wars, all those ISIS and all that stuff is because of the heritage, because of the Torath. People are imitating what's in the Torath. His defense, Sheikh El-Tayyeb, was saying, look, he says, politics steals or uses religion for its own purposes, which is absolutely true as well. I mean, you can't deny it. In the East, so basically, in the East, like in Arab countries, Middle Eastern countries, in the East and the West, and actually throughout time. I mean, look at the crucifixion of Christians in Japan. The Buddhists said, okay, this is the foreign religion. Let's kill them and expel them. Again, the emperor used Buddhism as a way of increasing his control over the whole population, the shogun. Anyways, so his point is true. Yeah, politics does use religion for its own purposes, both East and West. Whenever the politicians want to accomplish something that the religion refuses. So the politicians will use religion to accomplish their own will, which might actually contradict what the religion itself teaches. But they will do it in the name of religion, even though that religion actually contradicts what the politician is actually doing. So, and now we get to the Crusades. Remember how gloriously he speaks about the futuhat, about the foot of these Arabs from Spain to China. The futuhat, the invasions, glorious time who came from the strength of the heritage, from the strength of the Torath, the strength of the Islamic Torath. Great endeavors, great accomplishments. But of course, the Crusades, now we're going to talk about the Crusades. Here we go. Because he's talking about a religion being used by politicians. I'm going to play it. It is... where does it stop? Again, it's a few seconds, so whatever. It's 20 seconds or something. Here we go.
في الحروب الصليبية هو ماذا كانت حجة الصليبيين لأن ينتقلوا ويأتوا إلى ويستعمروا عالمنا هذا قرابة 100 عام أو أكثر ويقتلوا ويريقوا الدماء. الإنجيل في يد والسيف في يد، مع أن الإنجيل يبرأ من هذا الذي يفعلونه أيضا.
All right, so here we go. So Ahmed El-Tayyeb, Sheikh El-Tayyeb, he says, again, he's talking about religion being used by politicians. He says, this happened as well during the Crusades. They're still obsessed with the Crusades. They're still obsessed by being kicked out of Spain or Portugal by the Crusaders. It's good for them to invade, but to be repelled and kicked out, that's a bad thing. That's very bad. It's good for them to invade Jerusalem, but to be kicked out, that's horrible. Anyways, so here he goes. It happened during the Crusades. What was the reason of the Crusaders for their crusade? Of course, the real reason was because the Islamic horde was raping women, defiling churches, killing pilgrims, and on a continuous non-stop expansion and invasion of Christian lands. So the Crusades were a self-defense against. That is not to say that they did not commit some atrocities. All war has atrocities. Look around even now. So the Crusaders were finally, the West finally, at the urging of a great pope, finally decided to stand up and defend itself. And the Futuhat continued. They wanted to enter Austria. They wanted to enter Hungary. And Christian armies had to defend their lands. Enough is enough. But of course, this is evil for them. It is their God-given right, their Allah-given right to invade, so that they yiftahu, so that they open these countries. But for them to be kicked out or confronted, that's very bad. That's evil. So let's see what our good Sheikh El-Tayyeb, Sheikh the Kind, that's what he means, kind. Tayyib is kind. And he seems like a kind man, but again, he is brainwashed because all Muslims think the same. Futuhat are fine. We were just bringing God's religion. We're just invading lands. And Christianity did not spread by that. Christianity spread through martyrdom, through actually prayer and being people went to South America, even North America. Watch the movie The Mission with the Jesuits going up with the Indians. He was tortured and attacked and whipped. And same thing with the South America. Like watch again. It was good. It was preaching, teaching, evangelizing, true evangelization, not the false evangelization of Francis. Maybe in history there was one place which was invaded and people were forced to convert. I don't even know any. And actually, if any, the church condemned actually certain princes who tried to force the conversion of Jews. The church condemned them because this is against the teaching of the church, forced conversion. It's not true conversion. Anyways, so let's go with his reasons again. I don't want to harp too much here. It happened as well during the Crusades. What was the reason of the Crusaders? That they may come, Crusaders might come invade and occupy these our lands and countries. So they invaded first. They invaded, took over our Christian lands and countries, and now they're complaining that the Crusaders went back. They're our lands. That's it. We took them. Finders keepers. So he says, these Crusaders, why did they, what reasons did these Crusaders, and a lot of Muslims, maybe not him, but a lot of people say Crusaders meaning Christians. They always say Crusaders to mean Christians right now, these days. They came that they may, the reasons of the Crusaders, that they may come, invade, and occupy this our world, our lands, our countries, for approximately 100 years or even more, so that they may kill and shed blood. So that's the reason. The Crusaders came just to occupy and kill and shed blood. That's it. Oh, so the Islamic invasions of all of North Africa, the subjugation of nations, slavery. I mean, my mom watches a lot of Turkish soap operas and about the Ottoman Empire, and that is an empire. The Caliph was from the Ottoman Empire, the Caliphate, and the slaves they hoarded from the Russians. That's why we have a lot of blonde Turks, because of the children of the slaves, which the good Islamic hordes, took from the Russians and Western Europeans and Eastern Europeans. So slavery, enslavement, expansion is fine and dandy if you're acting in the name of Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May God praise Allah, praise upon him, and salutes or gives peace. God praise upon Muhammad. That is it's a weird thing, don't you think? You think that Muhammad should be praying to God. Anyways, beside the point. So, he says, look, these Crusaders, all they came for was to invade our countries, stay there for 100 lands, and the reason they came was to kill and shed blood. That's it. No other reason, because they're so mean and evil. And they did that with the gospel in one hand and the sword in the other hand. Even though the gospel is innocent of what they did. All right, so that is about the Crusaders. Now let's go down to the Jews now. Well, actually, maybe to the Israelis. So let's be accurate, to the Zionists, as he calls them. So that starts in number 23 minutes and 22 seconds. All right, it is just like 10 seconds, so I'll let him talk.
أستطيع أن أقول وعند الجرأة ما هي مبررات الكيان الصهيوني أن يبقى مستعمرا في بلاد الآخرين غير نصوص دينية في التوراة ويحرفونها ويزيفون.
Here we go. So he says, so now again he's continuing why in the use of religion by politicians. So Crusaders, they use religion just so they can kill and shed blood. That's the only reason. No other reason, because Muslims were so peace-loving and didn't invade any countries. So now it's number 23. Now he says, what are the excuses that the Zionist entity, he cannot even say the word Israel. So what are the excuses that the Zionist entity that is occupying others' lands and countries? So what excuses do these people use except religious texts from the Torah? And they, the Zionists or Jews really, and they distort, tahrif, they biharrafu, they change, tahrif means you're taking a text and you're actually changing in it. they distort, they بيحرفوا, they distort them, these religious texts from the Torah, and forge them. تزييف. So بيحرفوا بيزيفوا. So they distort and they forge these texts in the Torah, because according to Islam, according to their wisdom, the gospel, again, they are so ignorant. They talk about the gospel in the Torah. Well, the Torah is, what do you mean by Torah? Do you mean like the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, the Psalms, or what do you mean by Torah? I don't think they even know. Even the gospel, the gospel. What do you mean the gospel? Is it the fake infancy gospel, the Arab infancy gospel, which the Quran uses regarding Jesus Christ? Or what gospel are you talking about? Because there's the 4 gospels, there's the letters of the apostles, there's the Acts, there's the Apocalypse. Like, what do you mean by the gospel? So again, they don't know. They just talk. I mean, the Quran itself says that Christians believe that Mary is divine. The Trinity being Allah, his wife Mary, and his son Jesus. That is the Trinity in the divine Quran. All right. Shows you how divine it is. So they basically says, look, the Zionists, they use, so the Torah is, so for them, the gospel, basically the Old Testament and the New Testament, they're both completely, well, not completely, but significantly false. They were distorted and forged. A lot of forgery and distortion in both testaments. That is their dogma of faith for every Muslim. Because if you say otherwise, then you'll know that the Quran is a bunch of crap. I mean, that's how it is. And Islam and Muhammad is not a prophet, but is an anti-prophet. So they have to say that. And again, what is their proof? Where is their proof? Prove to us that the Torah was distorted. You've got the Qumran text, you've got the Septuagint text, you've got ancient manuscripts. I mean, a word here and a word there sometimes means the same thing. There's no same thing with the New Testament. Tons of manuscripts. Where is, and they say, because Muhammad said, look in the Torah, you Jews, look in the gospel, you Christians, and you will find me predicted. And you will know that Allah said I will be, a prophet will be coming. That's me. I'm the prophet. Look at your Torah. And of course, when the Christians and Jews looked at the Holy Scripture, said, no, we don't see anything. Sorry. Now the dogma was they have perverted and distorted and forged their gospels and scriptures. That is their dogma of faith, because how can you say otherwise? So this is and of course, the Quran itself uses apocryphal Jewish texts like the life of Adam and Eve to teach us, to declare that Satan was kicked out of paradise because he refused to bow down to Adam. And that is actually in the story of the apocryphal story of Adam and Eve, which nobody considers scripture, but the Quran does. It's in there. And the Quran same uses the infancy gospel, the Arab infancy gospel, again, for some of the miracles of Jesus. Again, the Quran uses Gnostic texts, late Gnostic texts. So all of them are forgeries. All of them are fakes for, like, Jesus, raising, bringing to life the birds, and not being crucified, being for them shubbiha lahum. So people thought, it seemed that he was crucified, and that is basically straight out Gnosticism, which said basically Jesus, he divided between the physical and the spiritual, and basically denied the physical crucifixion. So that's all from Gnosticism. So the Quran itself is based on fake, forged gospels and writings. and plus a bunch of Arab paganism added to the mix there, and some truth. So it's a nice big soup of scriptures. Anyways, so let's continue. So now 24 minutes, we're almost done here. 24 minutes and 3 seconds. 24 minutes. There we go.
تابع في الجرائد وأساتذة متخصصون في وشهادات وكبار في التعليم الفلسفي يدعون إلى عدم أو إلى لا تصدقوا أن الحقيقة مطلقة. طيب أنا
All right. So here it says, look, there are these professors. I mean, he sees them on television and everywhere. These professors and philosophers. And these people are declaring that there is no such thing as absolute truth. And of course, he says, how could that be? Of course there is absolute truth. I mean, the book you're giving me, he's holding a book. Is this absolute truth? Well, if it isn't, then, your whole argument is crap. And I 100% agree with Sheikh Al-Azhar there. Of course there is absolute truth. If there is no truth, then there is no... then there is nothing could be judged. Everything is, as Pope Benedict says, the dictatorship of relativism. Everything is relative. And for those who say there is no absolute truth, that is an absolute statement about there is no absolute truth. So basically they contradict themselves by just saying that. And that is his point as well, which I appreciated. Again, I'm not saying anything about, I'm just showing you the blindness of Muslims, where they talk about, all the scriptures, all the New Testament are fake and perverted and mutharrifa and muzayyafa and all that. Well, show us the proof. Prove it. They can't. And then the same thing, they say, all the bad evil, the Crusaders, but it's okay for us, niftah. It's okay for us to invade every other country. That's God's will. It's great. So, and they don't see the contradiction in it. Their eyes are, I don't know. They're just blinded to the inconsistency, I guess. So now he's going to continue his defense of truth, which is I 100% agree with. 26 minutes, 40 seconds. Where is it? Here we go. A few seconds
كتب
here.
فعلا لا يمكن المسيح يكون مسيحي إلا إذا كان يعلم أن عقيدته مطلقة وإلا لا يبقى
الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقوا
والملحد أيضا لا يمكن أن يكون ملحدا إذا تشكك لحظة في إلحاده أو في مذهبه الإلحادي. لابد وإلا المذاهب دي كلها تنهار. كل مذهب يزعم أنه يدافع عن الحقيقة المطلقة. وإلا ما الداعي
almost done.
وهذا من رحمة الله عشان الاختلاف يظهر. طيب بيني.
All right. So this is what he says, and I agree with him completely. I mean, he seems like a nice man, so I'm not, again, we have to distinguish between a person and the doctrine. Like if I say something against the religion, I am not attacking the person who adheres to that religion. Because I have, actually since I'm from the Middle East, I have a lot of Muslim friends and Muslim acquaintances. And they are very nice people. But, and again, actually, honestly speaking, I used to know some Muslim people, but as soon as they became fanatical, as soon as they became really observant, as they say, then they themselves basically broke off contact. They don't want to talk to a Christian, they don't want to talk to a Jew, they separate. So, for those who are not that observant, just pray and believe in God, or even just culturally Muslim, that's a different story. All right, so let's go here. So what did he say here? Again, about truth. There must exist an absolute truth. He says a Christian, and at least he says Christian, Masihi, because some fundamentalists, using the Quran itself, they will say Nasrani, which means like Nazarene, or Nazarene, these Nazarenes. And there was a sect of Nazarenes, and a heretical sect called the Nazarenes, as I believe, in Arabia at the time. So maybe that's where Muhammad gets some of his ideas about Christianity. Anyway, so he says, a Christian, Masihi, cannot be a Christian unless he knows that his creed is absolutely true. And an atheist too, cannot be an atheist if he had a doubt, even for a second, for an instant, about his atheism. Or all these creedal systems, so including, of course, Islam, beliefs would collapse if these people did not believe that what they have is the absolute truth. They would collapse. And that is 100% true, Sheikh Ahmed El-Tayyeb. Absolutely true. He says, look, every creed or belief claims that it is defending the absolute truth. And he says, look, this is from the mercy of God, so that the differences may be manifest. So these differences, it's the mercy of God that these differences may be manifest. And he stops at that. And of course, in a sense, he is correct. Now, if everybody adheres to what they believe to be the truth, the differences are manifest. There is no mishmash. There is no mingling of doctrines. A Jew is not a Christian, is not a Muslim, is not a Hindu, is not a Buddhist, is not an animist. We're not all worshiping the same God. No, we're not. There's different gods. There's one and only true God. And that is what one has to search for. And of course, we as Christians believe that we have the one true God revealed in the Old and the New Testaments. And then there can only be one God. And there must be a God according to logic and philosophy. He is the uncaused cause. Everything has a cause. And when you go far enough, you will reach a point where there can be no cause. So God is the uncaused cause. Anyways, Washa reads St. Thomas Aquinas on that. Anyway, so where does he continue here? So now he ends it with, I don't know if I'm gonna play anymore. Maybe I'll just play some with no audio here, and because he does, not necessary that you hear the what he's saying, but anyways, he says, look, so you talk about heritage, about the Torath, and you want to remove it, you want to change it, you want to eliminate it, you want to dilute it. And he says, look, really, what is left? What is left of our heritage? What is left of our Torath in these days? Except maybe just marriage and divorce and inheritance laws. That's it. Other than that, our Torath, our heritage is not applicable. Maybe Saudi Arabia would be a different story. I mean, he's talking about Egypt here and maybe other countries, but Saudi Arabia, they're still following the Sharia with all its intricacies. So he says, look, where is it left? There's nothing left except like maybe divorce and marriage and inheritance laws. I mean, look at us. He says, look at us. We eat like Europeans with both hands. Of course, if you eat with the left hand, that's evil in Islam. According to the Torah, you cannot eat with the left hand. You know why? Because the devil eats with his left hand. So you cannot eat with your left hand. That is the hand the devil eats with. You can't do that. So that's why he says, look, we eat with both hands. We use forks and knives. We dress like them. We drive cars from Europe and America. We even think like them in the universities. And the courses are based upon European understanding and Americans. So what is left of our Torah? What is left of our heritage? And actually, let me see if I can give you this here. It's 28:22. I'll actually let you hear him what he says here. 28. 22. I'll let you play this, and that will be the end of it. So I'll just play this and then comment. Oops.
بعض الناس يقولوا أين التراث مما نحن فيه؟ لأن
كل
احنا
التراث؟
شخصيتنا انتهت. هو احنا يعني حضرتك حدثني شخصيتنا ايه كعرب ومسلمين؟ لا شيء الآن.
لا شيء.
لا شيء الآن. ده يقضى في أمورنا. يقضى في أمورنا.
All right. So what did he say here? What did he end with? He said, look, I was hoping people would say, where is the Torath? Where is the heritage from what we are in right now? Where is it? We have no more, he says, look, we have no more personality as Arabs or Muslims. We are nothing. There's nobody, like, we don't have anything distinguishing feature left. We are no longer anything. We don't even have our Torath, our heritage, our laws, our Sharia, so we dress like Europeans, we eat like Europeans, we talk like Europeans, we're thinking like them. And so I was hoping people would tell me, where is the Torath? Bring back the Torath, bring back the heritage. And that's basically what Sheikh Al-Azhar basically ends with, and he continues a bit more, but nothing that important. But for those who understand Arabic, they can watch the whole thing. And then there's a big, long rebuttal or talk with the head of the University of Cairo, but that doesn't concern us here. So this is basically, that happened just a couple of weeks ago or whatever. So January 28th, this video is saying is from the 28th, but I think it took place on the 27th of January 2020. So we see that Islam, according to the Sheikh Al-Azhar, and basically he is one of the main ones, he is the main one, needs to keep the Torath, the heritage. And he has no problem, and he actually is very proud of the Futuhat, the invasions, Islamic invasions of all of the world, all of North Africa, all of the Middle East, up to Persia, up to China, up to Europe, Spain, Portugal. These Islamic invasions and colonization is great, is fine, it's beautiful. And this came from the Torath, the strength of the Islamic heritage. That's great, but if you try to defend against it, like the Crusaders, to say enough with the invasions, enough with the desecration of our churches, then you are invading their lands, their culture. You're attacking them when they are the ones who actually invaded and took over everything. So this is just kind of to open up the eyes of people. So this is what's happening. There is no reforming Islam because, again, it doesn't have a unified structure. If Sheikh Al-Azhar said anything different, somebody else, people would ignore him. They'll say, well, you have defected. You are no longer worthy of being called Sheikh Al-Azhar. Let's get somebody else who will actually teach the Islamic faith. So this was, so don't hold your breath for any Islamic reformation or Islamic renewal of Islamic thought, where all the hadiths, seerah, sunnah, sharia will be changed or altered or purified. That's not going to happen anytime soon or ever. But all the respects to Sheikh Al-Azhar, he defends his position with the typical Islamic blindness of the contradiction of the same act. Good for them, evil for others. And that's it. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, share. Maybe send it to your bishop or priest. Wake them up. Don't talk about like there is no danger of the spread of a religion which basically sees itself as the absolute superior, and the Quran itself tells you though to subjugate those who will not submit to their God and their prophet. Yeah, people have to wake up. If they don't want to wake up, then They will suffer what the Christians in the Middle East suffered. But at least the Christians in the Middle East suffered by being invaded by armies. Anyways, please like, subscribe, share. That's it. That's all. I'll see you next time.